What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. Check us out on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, and of course on social media, IG and X at Rich Q on QR, NFL Guru, our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance or Insider Football 1029 The Game, and of course part of the Broad Street South Network, kind enough to join us. And I will say this, it's not panic time, but it's panic time. The Philadelphia Eagles last night, to no surprise, by the way, we talked about it on Q yesterday, and then Martinez and company on Tony Bruno Sports Network. We were not going to be shocked either way if the Eagles won and or lost this game last night, my friend. But in the end, defensive gaffes, bad decision-making by Hurts, coaching staff, coordinators, the head coach, everyone failed miserably in a 20-17 brutal, bad loss on the road to Seattle, which is now their third straight loss. So for the team that started 10-1 with these Super Bowl aspirations, they are now 10-4, and they went, Lloyd, from pretty much your top one or two seed in the NFC currently to the fifth seed. So let's get into the game for a moment. I mean, listen, when we talked about it, we handicapped it. We didn't think it was going to be a shock, but how about, what's your biggest takeaway from last night, the loss for the Eagles?
Sure, Q. And a lot of things that we talked about in the preview that we thought could happen did happen with this team. A lot of foreshadowing. They got the early lead and they're up 10-3 at the half. And then eventually late in the fourth quarter, they had the lead. And you're like, okay, the defense is getting some three and outs.
Yep.
They're able to stop them. Some good things were happening there. But in the end, you let Drew Lock, a quarterback who's kind of a journeyman guy, go 92 yards, throw the game-winning touchdown to the sensational rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba. Great pit throw there. And you saw that Seattle was just hungry. And then you're starting to question this Philadelphia Eagles team, as you were saying, in terms of an overall organization. As Nick Sirianni, what buttons is he pushing the right buttons? Did they make the right decision with Sean Desai in terms of letting Matt Patricia be the defensive coordinator in this game? And particularly, Patricia was doing an okay job, but they were playing more man. And the Eagles just are kind of deficient at this point in the season, Q. And you saw that, particularly James Bradbury, their one corner, he was targeted over and over in the game. Seattle saw something. What I thought they were going to go after Ringo or Ricks, one of these younger corners. They kept going after Bradbury, and they were having success. And particularly in that last drive, and Locke hit that big throw. And then you're like, okay, this defense, they're kind of who we thought they were. Shaq Leonard did a nice job in the middle, stepping in for Cunningham, and he kind of was controlling things there. We didn't see a lot of bad plays there, but on the outside, they were having some difficulty. So tough loss for the Eagles. I heard from all my people, all my Eagles friends and family, they're kind of despondent. And this team, as you're saying, 10-1, they were top of the world, but now they're kind of, they're in the playoffs, but there are a lot of question marks when this team does play in the playoffs. Can they fix this at this late in this juncture of the season?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it, right? There's a lot of questions that have yet to be answered. And a couple of things, you go back to the game last night, I thought even if they were able to punch it in and make it 14-0 as opposed to, kicking field goals, they probably would have put Seattle away, because I didn't really trust Drew Lock. No disrespect to him. And by the way, you got to feel happy for the kid afterwards with that drive and perfect throw and making all the big plays. And my buddy kind of texts me and he's like, the moment's too big for him. Well, you let it play out and you realize that the moment wasn't too big for him. They picked on Bradbury. They exploited that secondary, which we talked a little bit about, did we not? And they did it without DJ Metcalf. But just, replaying the game in my head, as I alluded to, when it's 7-0, Eagles got to settle for a field goal. And then boom, Seattle gets that field goal. It's a 10-3 game going in to the break. And you kind of, if you're Seattle, you're feeling pretty good about yourselves. And then you come right out in the third quarter. And what did they do? They made adjustments. They ran the ball with Walker. They get the touchdown. They tie it up. And then the character test was for the Eagles to counter that, which they did. And they had a really nice drive And that was culminated with the Hurts plunge to make it 17-10. But from that point on, when you look at it, punt, interception, punt, interception. We'll start with Jalen Hurts. You know, the numbers 22, I'm sorry, 17-31, a buck 43. The line did a good job, but he was picked twice. The former Giant, Julian Love, both times. The one I think Watkins has to, you got to figure out a way to make a play on the ball. But the inexplicable one was the last one that pretty much put the nail in the coffin, because they had plenty of time, believe it or not, with Jake Elliott. You've got a couple timeouts. You got what, 30-something odd seconds.
All three of their timeouts.
They had all
in
three.
About
Yes.
30 seconds.
You can't make that decision. You can't make that throw there. I'm not going to sit here and say he's regressed. I don't think he was sick last night. I'm not going to give him the pass, because if he went 20-25 for 288 and 3 touchdowns, everyone's going to say it's the flu game, which is ridiculous because it's a friggin' regular season game. If he was that sick, then you should have went with Mariota, because you needed the game. You should have gave him the reps during the week of practice. But the decision-making, the tentativeness, the holding the ball too long, you look at the stats and you look at where he was last year, and then you look at where he is this year with the turnovers and the fumbles. It's almost as though he's regressed, especially over the last month of the season. I believe decision-making you can coach. I believe careless football you can kind of coach up and fix. What I find a little disturbing, and my buddies and I were going back and forth, I still believe he's fixated on A.J. Brown. And he's trying to force feed him the football when you've got other players, whether it's Swift out of the backfield or Goddard or Smith, that can make plays. So right now, are we starting to see who Jalen Hurts is? Do we sit there and say, off night, okay, banged up, had the flu, still a very good quarterback, or the offensive coordinator and the head coach are not helping this kid out because they're not putting in creative plans, creative plays that actually accentuate the strengths of this offensive team?
Right there. And they all had a hand in this. But when I was watching this game, I just had that feeling. I kept saying, wow, last year they would have destroyed this Seahawks team.
100%.
I know it's on the road and everything, but that was a downtrodden team. They didn't have their quarterback. They had some other injuries and situations, and the Eagles would have stepped on their throat, got the big lead, and then it would have been a laugher. But this season, everything is a struggle. And it all starts with Jalen Hurts, as you're saying. You're starting to wonder, is he regressing? What's going on with him? Is Sirianni and Brian Johnson not coaching him up? Because last year he had only 8 turnovers, all of in the 22 season. So, and only 6 interceptions. This year he has already 10 interceptions, actually 12 after last night, and then all the fumbles that we talked about. So, he's had turnover issues, and I think he's really forcing the ball in situations when he doesn't need to, and he's greedy. You know what I mean? He wants that home run play. I don't know if that's what the play design is, or if he's not seeing the check down type of throws, but he's trying to drive that football down the field, and he's saying, "Hell be damned, I'm going to throw it into double coverage," as he did that last throw. AJ Brown was blanketed on that play there. Somebody else had to have been open. I'll have to look at the all 22, but I think Devontae Smith was open on a lesser throw
Underneath.
On that last game-ending interception. So he's got to learn to kind of just be more efficient and see the whole field. So a lot for Jalen Hurts to work on, and there are a lot of question marks, particularly his decision-making, and just take the easy throw. Take the easy throw and protect the football, because as you said, all he had to do was, he had a great game running the football, 13 rushes for 82 yards, 2 touchdowns. In that last sequence to get the game time field goal, he probably only needed about 15 more yards. He could have ran and got it. They had 2 timeouts left at that point of interception. And he could have called timeout and then set everything up. But he wanted to drive it downfield, and it was a bad decision to throw to Quez Watkins. I know some of my Eagles fans are saying, all right, he got interfered with. They didn't call it. But again, that was kind of an overthrow, and you had the DB run the route for a receiver that's kind of deficient. So there's got to be better places for him to put the football. than the decisions that he's making at this point in the season.
And I don't know if you're targeting in that spot Watkins as well. That's play calling by the OC and the head coach. And, to your point, they had a huge gain, right? On that first down. I mean, Seattle basically just dropped back in coverage. Then he comes out afterwards, quote, Jalen Hurts, mind you, we didn't execute. I don't think we're committed enough. Just got to turn it around. It's a challenge that we have to embrace. Just continue to see it through. One word stands out: committed. I mean, when you've got your all-pro, your franchise quarterback who says that, I don't want to speculate who he's taking a shot at, but he's obviously calling out his teammates. I mean, we can sit there and say it's Watkins or AJ Brown or I don't know. We don't know, but man, I tell you, you make a comment like that, then you have to watch the film, and then you go to practice later in the week. I'm wondering how guys going to react. Are we going to have another closed door meeting? I mean, at this point, I feel as though those comments were very telling, because the quarterback, the head coach, and the coordinators, and really the head coach too, all have to take a hit. We'll get into the head coach in a moment, but when you hear an all-pro, your franchise, your face of your franchise, make that comment after a bad loss, your third straight, and the ship sinking a little bit, what's your takeaway?
Yeah, Q, they're in desperation mode, and there's a lot wrong with this team. And I just, there's 3 games left, and then they'll move into playoffs. But I just feel like there's just too many holes to fix at this point in the season. They're going to try. There's dissension in the ranks. Yes, there's something amiss with this team. Last year was the magic carpet ride. They rode all those big wins where they lose 2-3 games the whole season going into the playoffs. And everything was kumbaya, and everybody was getting along. And there's some dissension in the ranks here. Whenever you hear there's a closed door players only meeting, that always tells you, like, all right, something's just not right here. And it may be some of these younger guys aren't on the same page with him. It may be the coaching decisions, because Bradbury kept saying, well, I work to the sticks. That's what I was taught. You hear him in his press conference saying that. So it's like, all right, what are they teaching these guys? And the Eagles they're a mess right now, Q. Third straight loss. And it's the chickens coming home to roost, because everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. But they have a chance to clean this up, but I just don't know if it's going to happen.
I have to laugh when Eagles fans, I think they're naive and delusional when they say we'll be fine. I mean, what are you watching? When you're 10-1, you tend to look past sloppiness, mistakes, because you're 10-1, all is well. When you start to lose, that's when it's really put under the microscope. It's highlighted. We illustrate it, right? Doing what we do, and it's magnified a lot more. And it just now all of a sudden it starts to manifest itself into something even bigger and larger. And I also believe that this head coach, and my thoughts on the head coach. I mean, I think he's a freaking clown. I can do without the antics and the other shit. Since he made his little comments, get out of here, Kansas City, they're 3-1, right? So, you take the good with the bad. To me, he's a glorified cheerleader. He really is. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason. I would really love to know who's handling the play calling duties. Because again, we only go by what we're told, who's in the locker room, who's reporting, who's getting the sources of the information. But the head coach has to reel these guys in, right? He has to reel them in, because the theatrics, pardon me, everything else is smoke and mirrors. And when you start to hear, get rid of the head coach, right? Pardon me, get rid of the head coach. The bloom is off the rose with this guy after he took him to the Super Bowl, and they started 10-1 and now they're 10-4. There's got to be some issues going on. And I'm just wondering if the players are now losing confidence in the head coach, but I also believe it's a head coach's job to get these guys ready to play, right? I mean, you have to have a strong coaching staff. You're flip-flopping coordinators. They want the offensive coordinator out. You flip-flop defensive coordinators. You're doing at 13, 14 games into the friggin' NFL season. That reeks of desperation to me. That reeks of, I'm going to start to fight off orthodox, and then I'm going to jump to southpaw. Why? Because I don't have a plan B. I've never fought southpaw before. You're going to get knocked on your ass. So, like, right now, when you look at Sirianni, what can he do to reel these guys back in? And do you believe he's just maybe not as good as the head coach that people made him out to be because of the success they had last season.
Okay, this is a situation where these are moves that you expect like the Raiders to be doing. A team that fired their head coach,
Yeah.
they have a losing record,
Yep.
and not a team that's 10 and whatever,
Yep.
10-3 now. And it just shows you that organizationally, top to bottom, somebody is not on the same page, whether it's the GM to the coach to his staff to the players that are kind of questioning some of the staff members and a big thing is we talked about they lost their two coordinators and allowed Gannon and Steichen to take some of these underlings that were there, and then they didn't bring back Denard Wilson, who probably should have been a defensive coordinator. Now he's doing a great job with the Baltimore Ravens. He was their DB coach, doing a nice job there. But there's a mess with the Eagles. I don't know any other words to say other than a mess because this is something that you just cannot gloss over. They got to clean this thing up if they want to save their season. And it starts, as you said, with Sirianni. Enough with all the histrionics and the faces and just coach these guys. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You look at like a Kyle Shanahan. He is in the mix the whole game, particularly with his quarterback, with his offense and his side of the football. Even Belichick, as bad as their season is, he is always in tune with that defense and understanding what's going on. And I just don't get that feeling from Nick Sirianni. And did he output his coverage? You kind of wonder because he made the Super Bowl, and then everybody said, "Oh, this former Division III receiver, all of a sudden he is in the ilk of some of these better coaches out there that have already won a Super Bowl, like a McVay."
I think he's a glorified cheerleader. I mean, last night was a spot where you've dropped two in a row. You were 10-1. You had two back-to-back waxings, right? Last night was a get off the mat, show me something character test. Everything's going to be okay. Even if we get out of there with an ugly win, we went on the road, tough environment, whether it was going to be Geno Smith or Drew Lock, it doesn't matter, right? If you were to tell me that you're on the road, you have a lead on the road, up 10 against a backup quarterback, and DK Metcalf was held in check, you're probably going to take that W, right? That's a W if you really think about it. And it's just they're slow out of the gate. The offensive play calling is so it's even McCaffrey mentioned it, other former players on the Manning cast. We've seen analysts mention it. It's so what they're running. When they're running off tackle, when they're running, off, with a two tight end set, or it's an RPO, or they're going Brown. I mean, it's almost as you can see it happening, right? I mean, watching the Giants for as long as I had, I always would know when it was going to be check off or delayed draw or handoff or play action, whether it was Eli. You just become so familiar. That's what I'm seeing right now, and I just think it's a deeper thing where at this point of the season, and I mentioned this the other day on the air, look, the Patriots were train wrecking people in 2007. Giants played them tough the last game in the season. Everyone knows, gave them confidence. But even during the playoff run, the Patriots were not steamrolling people. And then they got clipped by the Giants and upset in the Super Bowl. Right now, the Eagles might be 10-4, but they're not man, you don't want to see this team in the playoffs 10-4. They're a 10-4 by the grace of God, because they should have lost to Buffalo and they should have lost to Kansas City. Now we're talking about an 8-6 squad who might be on the outside looking in. So I believe this is who they really are. And they stockpiled the wins early on, bad NFCs aside from Dallas, soft schedule, this, that, the other thing. And they were very lucky to win those two games that we documented. You can go back to the first Dallas game, the Miami game as well, with the officiating was just so, ridiculous. I don't know if they have time to fix this, is my point, because if they play like this and have to go on the road against the 49ers are going to destroy them.
At this point, Q, you got to wonder, are they going to be one and done in the playoffs, or are they going to, possibly win a wild card game and then in the divisional round, get that exit that we see so many teams that we kind of say, okay, they weren't true
Yeah.
contenders, fall out of the mix. And you know, they still have a chance to win that division. They got to probably focus on that, winning these last three games, win out Giants, Arizona Giants, and then hope that Dallas can stumble because Dallas has their schedule's fairly tough at Minnesota, at Miami, Detroit, and then at Washington. So the Eagles have a chance to win the division first and then go from there. And maybe they can fix some things in that regard. But Q, as you were saying, I think this team is who they are at this point in the season. There's no way they're going to change. They're not going to bring any free agents in. There's no magic player that's going to come off of somebody's practice squad. The trade deadline's long past. This is the group that is the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles. And they got to figure this thing out, starting from the top with Nick Sirianni. He's got to, and if I was him, I would work to the strengths of this team. They need to build off of their offensive line, which is one of the best in the league, by running the football. Last night, they did rush for 178,
Yep.
but they need to get more from their running backs in terms of that rushing total. And then in terms of their defense, they got to get pressure on a quarterback with that defensive line. That's going to help that
Yeah.
secondary that's so depleted. So it's a tough go for the Eagles. But as you said, Q, you know, when you're thumping your chest at 10-1, you know, sometimes people are ready to give your come-ups, you know, and that's what they're getting at this point.
And listen, I know the Giants are a bad team and Jaworski was killing them. Listen, the way the Eagles are playing right now, got to play that team twice that has nothing to play for. And that is a scary team. And I'm not saying they're a scary team because of who they are. I'm saying when you've got nothing to lose, you're going to just throw everything out there, you know, fake punts, fake field goal. You're going to go for broke at this point. Plus they've got Arizona. That could be a tricky game as well. But last night they really could have silenced a lot of people. Lloyd Vance joining us on a Tuesday edition of BYP. Q here. Also, don't forget, you can catch me with Angel Martinez and Company on Tony Bruno Sports Network, Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Download the app. And Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Broad Street South. And, of course, our newest guest on Martinez and Company. And we hope to keep it rolling with you, my friend. All right, let's get into Aaron Rodgers before we go to Lackey and Game Ball. Not a surprise. You know, he has mind F the Jets brass, the organization, the players, his teammates, and the fan base. Because, and I said this Monday on Q with you, he was never going to play. And now that there's no reason to play, he's not going to have to play. He wasn't medically cleared. I think it's all just a big dance. I think it's utterly ridiculous. I'm not going to go as far to say he didn't tear his Achilles. You know me, conspiracy theorist, but I'm like, this is utterly ridiculous. Like, would you not want to, you know, share the secret remedy, the secret sauce, if you will? I'm not asking you to give me the ingredients to Coke or Dr. Pepper or Pepsi, but my goodness, you know, I think we need to know. There's all these theories right now, you know, he's in cahoots with the doctors and getting paid and all this crap, but he backed Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas. And I believe he did that because he's backing two guys that are pushovers and he realizes, let them stay because I'm going to run the show. I think the Jets, if they had any balls, and they don't, the circus is ended. It's leaving town for good. Goodbye, Robert Saleh. Goodbye, Nathan Hackett. Goodbye, Joe Douglas, and goodbye, relax. Go back in a frigging cave, smoke and joke, have the shrooms, find yourself, meditate, do whatever the hell you want to do. And like clear house is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers is always me. You know, enough. You know, the story around the NFL are these games and the playoff push of all these teams and
100%.
these backup quarterbacks and, you know, Christian McCaffrey, what he's doing to Hill. They're the story, you know, and Aaron Rodgers fade into the background because we all knew you were not going to play and you kept throwing it out there on the McAfee show that, hey, I've been cleared. Hey, I can practice. Hey, you know, I'm doing dropbacks. There's no way a 40-year-old quarterback's coming back from Achilles injury and you know, it's going to be interesting to see if he wants to pack this in and that's his ending note. But I do agree with you that this Jets team, they got to tear this whole thing down. It's a total mess. And Joe Douglas, their general manager, he'll probably fall on the sword. And Robert Saleh, who just has not done enough, and particularly with Zach Wilson, their draft pick, and it just stems from him. So They're going to tear this thing down. Rodgers, will see if he comes back. I think he's going to want to come to training camp and get it done. But you never know with him what the off season holds because, like you said, he likes to go in a cave and he likes to do all kinds of things, and then he may decide enough's enough, and that's I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? That's the end of his career. Go away.
At this point, is it also possible that he's going to hold him hostage in this regard? Um, yeah, I mean, his comments were he wants to keep playing, but who's to say it's with the Jets, right? Contract or no contract. Is it possible he can go back and say, look, yeah, I'll come back. I want to play next couple of years, but you have to keep Nathan Hackett on, Nathaniel Hackett. That's my guy, right? Because they drew up these plays, the offensive plays, to game planning, the scheme to fit Aaron Rodgers' strength. And that's where you have to sit there as a franchise and say, we have to do what's right for the franchise, not by you. Like, that's the one thing that really bothers me. Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great. We're not disputing that. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. We're not disputing any of that. Might be the most gifted, talented quarterback we've ever seen when it comes to throwing the football. But he speaks as though he's been with the Jets for 15 years. And that rubs me the wrong way because he hasn't. I get the resume, the credentials, the cachet, the MVPs, the Super Bowls, Super Bowl win. But come on, man, you've had a cup of coffee. Seriously. His Jet career, my cup of coffee lasted longer than his Jet career thus far. It's 4 friggin' snaps.
Yeah. Q, and he's going to waffle. He's going to waffle back and forth, and as you said, hold the team hostage. But if I'm the Jets and Woody Johnson, who owns the team, the most important person, I'm saying enough with all this Aaron Rodgers running everything. This season they went all in on him. He was their guy. He got to bring all his cronies that we've documented, including Hackett and Cobb and Billy Turner and a bunch of guys, and it just didn't work. So you know what? Blow it up, move forward with the new game plan. Okay, if he wants to be part of that new game plan, the new coaching staff, or if they kind of change the coaching staff and bring some new people in, fine, all well and good. But if you don't want to be part of the solution, then it's time for you to leave it and go someplace else. So the contract's kind of value add to, I remember looking at it in the preseason. They could step out of it very easily. It was only a 2-year deal and let him go someplace else and try it somewhere else. But, him holding him hostage, I just don't think that's a good idea. Don't let him run the situation. Hire a new head coach, hire a new general manager, and let those guys build their system, be architects.
Yeah, and don't retread guys, the Mike Tannenbaums and the Rex Ryans. That's just ludicrous. All right, another weekend of NFL action in the book. Game balls and Lackey. I'm going to say your game ball. This is me. This is just me. I would go with my guy at Baker's dozen and Baker Mayfield. Perfect. Ooh. Perfect quarterback rating in Lambeau. 4 touchdown passes, 3 dimes, and a big win for the Bucks. Are you kidding me?
Good. That's a good pick, but it's not my guy. I mean, he did have a career day, and it was a surprise. They did a great job up there, and you're seeing that Bucks team. They're 7-7. They may win. That Little Sisters of Poor NFC South division, but good win for him. But no, I did not give it to him. I gave it to Christian McCaffrey. He is just dominant at this point in the season. He's looking like he could be the MVP. Brock Purdy, and he acquiesced and said, look, I would give it to Christian McCaffrey. And when you look at the numbers, Q, and watch the game, I mean, he had 18 rushes for 115 yards and a touchdown. And then he caught 5 passes for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he is the engine that stirs the Niners. This is a very dangerous team. They win 45-29. I know it's only the Arizona Cardinals, but he's just showing week in, week out that he deserves a game ball.
Yeah, I mean, we might get co-MVPs. Remember they did that with Barry Sanders and Brett Favre?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I think it was 97. Sure. There, I pulled it up last night. There's been 18 running backs, I believe, that have won MVP. Obviously, Jim Brown won multiple times. I believe he won 3. He had like an 8-year gap. But I pulled up Adrian Peterson's MVP season in 2012, I believe. McCaffrey, the numbers he's putting up, even catching the ball out of the backfield, receptions and yards. I mean, he's going to dwarf the total yards from scrimmage. Yeah, we might get look, CMC, Brock Purdy, who knows? Lackey. Was it a head coach?
No, but I think you'll know the team. So there's a lot of choices, but I think you'll know the team that deserves the Lackey.
You can't give it to Atlanta. They stink.
No.
It had to be a team that had a bad loss, right? It's not the Eagles.
Darn right it's the Eagles. So who are you
Oh,
picking?
this close to Christmas, and then you're going to get. I mean,
I
I'm
know
going to
the
have to hear
family
about
members.
this from
They're
the
not going to
Vance family.
Well, one of my he's my best buddy. He called me. Oh, he was just going off on Hurts and talking about how he's the worst and he's terrible. You know,
Let
all
me
this
ask you,
stuff.
it's okay for them to
It's not him. It's
criticize.
not Hurts.
Yeah, it's okay for them to criticize, but when I do it with you, all they focus is on
Exactly. I know. You can talk about my little brother, but not me. You know what I mean? But he's not playing well. I was this close to giving it to him because that throw at the end in the double coverage, but I didn't give it to him. But I went with another Eagle. I'll give you one guess.
Bradbury.
Bradbury. I went back and crunched the numbers. They Seattle saw something in the film. They targeted against him 8 times in a game, so they were like 8 for 8 against him for over 150 yards. And then
Wow.
the key thing was they're backed up in their end with Drew Lock. They got to go 92 yards. They went 4 for 4 against Bradbury on that last game-winning drive, including Jackson Smith and Jigba hooking him down that sideline. I mean, you could see he's lost 2-3 steps. Forget one step. He's a liability out there. And then you didn't have Slay play. It's a tough job for Patricia or Desai or whoever's running that defense to scheme up that secondary because they just got so many holes. So I give it to James Bradbury because he's a liability out there. And I'm sure the Giants this week, you're going to see Wan'Dale Robinson and Hyatt try to beat, and Hyatt can take the top off of defense.
It's a really good point. They've got speed, man. Robinson is a really nice player coming off that ACL injury. But yeah, I mean, perhaps the Giants saw something in Bradbury too, even though he played well last year with the Eagles. But these guys age, man. And by the way, defensively, the third downs in those drives for Seattle, I felt as though every time 3rd and 10, the Eagles were going man coverage, and they were getting beat.
Yeah. And that's Patricia. That's what he runs, that man coverage scheme. And you have to have the guys for it. I know everybody was mad at Gannon because he kind of ran that soft zone, but it's going to have to be a mix of this or that because they did do a good job at a certain point. They held Seattle 6 of 14 on 3rd downs, which was always kind of their Achilles heel in this game. But at key moments at the end of the game, they weren't getting any pressure. They sacked a Lock twice in the game, but they didn't get the pressure at the end, and it allowed him to, as I said, go down the field and target James Bradbury at the end.
All right, he's Lloyd Vance at Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance Insider Football 1029 The Game, Broad Street South. You'll catch him later in the week with me, BYP, and on Q as we break down the upcoming slate of actions. Follow him on Twitter for all the NFL insights, the recaps, the game balls, and the lackeys as well. Always appreciate a couple moments, pal.
Q, thanks for having me on.